Medieval Europe was a time of violence and betrayal. Wars had become increasingly common as royal families contested against each other to attain the ultimate prize of exerting their absolute control over their respective kingdoms. Today, we are going to talk about the Count's Feud, also known as the Count's War, which was a civil war that raged in Denmark in 1534 to 1536 and brought about the Reformation in Denmark. The Count's Feud takes its name from the Protestant Count Christopher of Oldenburg, who supported the Catholic King Christian II, deposed in 1523 over the election of Christian III. So, sit back and relax as we get into the details of what actually happened in this conflict. Denmark was a county society at the start of the 16th century, with the monarchy, bishops, and nobility representing the upper sections of society fighting for power. While the county of account benefited the king by allowing him to demand that the sheriff accounts for incurred revenue and spending, the county of tax benefited the nobility by requiring the sheriff to pay a fixed fee to serve the king. The church's position was questioned with a wave of reformism sweeping Northern Europe, including not just Martin Luther's Protestantism, but also reformist Catholicism. This latter sort of reformism piqued the interest of the then Danish monarch Christian II, which sparked discontent among the country's Catholic bishops. Because several of the bishops came from Denmark's most prominent noble families, the king's attitude infuriated the aristocracy, as did Christian II's desire to enhance the central royal power with the help of bourgeois officials. Furthermore, Christian II was despised by the ruling classes because he enacted laws that increased the legal standing of peasants. As a result, the aristocracy and the higher clergy, the prelates, declared Frederick I, the king's uncle, the king towards the end of March of 1523. Frederick I, who had long sympathized with Reformed Catholicism, converted to Lutheranism in August of 1526. As a result, the Danish clergy had to make numerous concessions, and several newly installed bishops were barred from seeking consecration in Rome. Evangelical preachers were allowed to preach anywhere, and the king's protection allowed several free congregations to form in Danish market towns. The mayors of Malmö, Jørgen Klock and Jep Nielsen, backed the assemblies. In 1528, the city saw the establishment of an evangelical book printing company, and Jørgen Klock was granted permission by the king to take both the Grey Brothers and the Black Brothers monasteries. Christian II landed in Norway in the autumn of 1531 with a Dutch expeditionary force to reclaim power in the Nordic countries. In exchange, Frederick I and the National Council reached an arrangement with Lübeck, and the Danish army leadership gave Christian carte blanche to negotiate. Frederick I breached the pact after being pressured by the Libyan alliance partner, and Christian was imprisoned at Sonderburg Castle in Als. The agreement's purpose was to keep Dutch traders out of the Baltic Sea, which Lübeck accomplished. The Danish and Swedish kingdoms, on the other hand, were hesitant to endorse it, but once Chavez was imprisoned, they changed their minds. After Frederick I's death in 1533, the Jutland nobility proclaimed his son, then Duke Christian of Gottorp, as king under the name Christian III. Meanwhile, Count Christopher organized an uprising against the new king, demanding that Christian II be set free. The most serious challenge to Denmark came from Lübeck, where the People's Party's leader, Merchant Jørgen Willenwever, had become mayor in March 1533 and had intentions to restore the Hanseatic city's former power. For the time being, he wanted Duke Christian on the throne, but when his, Mogen Gyo's, and Malmö mayor Jürgen Koch's attempts to persuade the Duke to accept the crown failed because Christian would not accept the crown without the support of a large part of the nobility, he changed his mind and supported Jürgen Koch's plan to liberate Christian II and place him on the throne. Supported by Lübeck and troops from Oldenburg and Mecklenburg, parts of Zealand and Scania nobilities rose up together with cities such as Copenhagen and Malmö. The violence itself began in 1534, when a privateer captain who had earlier been in Christian II's service, Clement Anderson, called Skipper Clement, and Count Christopher's request, instigated the peasants of Vendesil in North Jutland to rise up against the nobles. The headquarters for the revolt came to be in Aalborg. In May 1534, Count Christopher launched a fake invasion on Holstein, which was promptly repulsed by Johann Rantzau, threatening an attack on southern Jutland, prompting the Danish Council of State to intervene. The Jutland nobles installed Duke Christian as the new king on June 4th of the same year, and the Council of State dispatched riders from Scania to fortify Denmark's western defenses. Jürgen Koch used this to close the gates of Malmö. Malta's castle was taken over by a group of city residents, and the sheriff was imprisoned. Following that, Count Christopher boarded a Libyan fleet and landed at Feud on June 22, 1534. The Copenhagen magistrate responded to the call to join him on behalf of Christian II that they would like to see the old king free first. However, Zealand was without military defense, and both Roskilde and Køge surrendered to the counts. As the army met only weak resistance and burned down several estates on its conduct, many nobles also surrendered in the hope of preserving their property. In July 1534, Christopher was hailed as head of state by the Zealand County Council in Ringsted, and the following month, on August 10, 1534, the Scanian nobility swore in St. Leber's Hill, after negotiations led by Jürgen Koch, his allegiance to Christopher on behalf of Christian I. On October 16, 1534, a noble army led by Niels Brock and Holger Rosenkratz was defeated at the Battle of Svenstrup. Meanwhile, Christian III negotiated peace with Lübeck, allowing large forces to be released to attack the rebels. The royal troops, led by Johann Rantzau, chased the peasants all the way to Aalborg, where they had sought sanctuary behind the city's defenses under the command of Skipper Clement. Rantzau's men stormed the city on December 18th, and it fell. At least 2,000 people are reported to have died in the storming of the city and the plundering that followed in the days after the city's fall. Skipper Clement, who had been gravely injured, managed to flee, but was recognized by a farmer in Storvord, east of Aalborg, and given over to Rantzau a few days later. The Judicial Council of Viborg later sentenced Skipper Clement to death, and he was executed in 1536. The Catholic faith's rebellious followers, as well as the farmers on the Swedish front, did not fare well. The Swedish king, Gustav Vasa, sent a Swedish army to Christian III's help, which invaded Scania at Loshult and plundering, burning, and murdering their way through the Genger area on their route to Vea. A Swedish force stormed Halland afterward, but it was annihilated by fire and sword. Some Scanian nobility allied with the Swedes, although Count Christopher was supported by Tigge Krabbe of Helsingborg Castle. The Swedes and a noble army attacked Helsingborg in January 1535. Outside the castle, a force led by Jürgen Koch of Lübeck and Malmö was entrenched, and in a pivotal moment, Tyge Krabbe ordered the castle's cannons to begin to fire on the defenders, after which he opened the fortress to the Swedes, who set fire to Helsingborg and burned it to ashes. With that, Count Christopher lost control of Denmark east of the Sound. After the victory at Aalborg, Rantzau brought his troops to Funen, and on June 11, 1535, they fought the Battle of Oxnebjerg, where the rest of Count Christopher's army was decisively defeated. Both Copenhagen and Malmö, however, were able to hold out until 1536, where they were forced to capitulate after several months' siege. With this, the Count's feud was officially over. The war had thus ended. It had been partly an unsuccessful attempt by Lübeck to regain its former position of power in the Nordic countries, and partly the last despairing struggle of the unprivileged estates against the higher, for the most part still Catholic estates, the bishops, and many nobles. The citizens and peasants had admittedly been overcome, but not by the nobility. It was King Christian's German general and German countrymen who had crushed the resistance and restored the rule of law, and the result was soon apparent. The victory of the king brought about the final fall of the old Catholic Church. After consultation with the senior officers and his German and some Danish advisors, Christian III had the Catholic bishops in the city imprisoned in August, and, under strong pressure, the Council of the State had to issue a statement in which it approved and happened and promised not to oppose the gospel doctrine. The introduction of the Reformation was thus prepared by a royal initiative. After the Lord's Day, Christian III worked to organize a princely national church, which was independent of the papacy in Rome and the Catholic Church. A new church order was drawn up at the king's request in 1537 and could be implemented in its final form in 1539. The bishops were replaced as diocesan leaders by superintendents, a title which, however, was short-lived and soon returned to the term bishop. They were to be appointed by the king, and they were not to earn any major income. The parish priests were required to preach the gospel, and the congregation was to be brought up in the evangelical faith. The teaching of the catechism was introduced to children and was conducted by the bells. Thus Denmark got a rightful king, abolished his regiment of bishops, put the nobility in place, and established the faith of the future. Common enemies meant that the Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish kings could, for a time, find a basis for cooperation. This was formalized by the agreement in Bromsebro in 1541. Following the feud, the nobility gathered and used the traditional method of intermarriage to repair the rifts. The Bille family, who had blood ties to 7 of Denmark's 8 Catholic bishops, was one of the most powerful among the Danish nobles in Scania at the time. The Billes also held castles throughout Denmark and Norway, and had 6 family members on the council of the realm. Claus Bille, despite his religious allegiance with the Catholic faith, fought to retain the family's dominant position of Stockholm bloodbath fame, second cousin to Gustav Vasa, by marrying into the Brahe family, another important Scanian family within the Danish aristocracy at the period, and was able to secure his family. One of the first aristocracy families to convert to Lutheranism was the Brahe family. Claus Bille married his 18-year-old daughter Beate to Otto Brahe in 1546, and so became a grandpa of Tyge Brahe, better known as Tycho Brahe, the arguably most famous Scanian of the time. Tycho Brahe's paternal grandfather, whom he was named after, Tyge Brahe of Tosterup in eastern Scania, was killed on September 7, 1523 during the siege of Malmö, fighting for Frederick I. Axel Brahe, the younger brother of Tyge Brahe, was a long-serving governor of Scania and one of the first to convert to Lutheranism. The consequences of the peasant rebellion, on the other hand, were extremely costly to all parties involved. Many people were forced to buy their lives with large donations to the king and aristocracy. Furthermore, the peasants' dissatisfactions, which had culminated in the Count's Feud revolt, were exacerbated when the nobles began to band together even more after this tragedy. Furthermore, as a result of this battle, Christian III's reign saw the emergence of royal absolutism in Denmark, as well as increased repression of the peasant classes. The introduction of a Swedish army into Scania was a significant consequence that the Danes did not recognize at the time. Though the Swedes came at the invitation of a Danish king to help subdue his rebellious subjects and dutifully handed over the territory they conquered to the king, it clearly whetted Swedish appetite for the territory, which manifested itself in a long series of subsequent wars, culminating in the final Swedish victory and conquest in 1658. So that is all the time we had today, folks. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to view more videos about famous historical conflicts, then do not forget to subscribe to our channel to view more of our amazing content. Oh, and do hit the bell icon to receive instant notifications about all our future videos. See you all next time.